This isn't just a film about 9/11 and the wars that followed. This isn't just about the lies from the press and the Pentagon. It's about our world, and how information is conveyed, and how prejudice is fostered by deception. About how we are subjected to indoctrination and used and pitted against one another. To understand the massive military expenditures and how they are eating up so much wealth, the first hurdles we have to get over are the trust in the mass media and the stigma associated with the concept of conspiracy. Every time the CIA or any other intelligence agency does a covert operation, that's a conspiracy. It's a bunch of people getting together in secret to do something illegal and lying to everyone else.
In the Gulf of Tonkin,
they took the babies out of the incubators.
We don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud.
There are a lot of strange conspiracies about many things, but that is not a reason to reject conspiracies categorically. For example, the Iran-Contra affair was a massive government conspiracy hidden from the press and public for years. It happened in my lifetime, and it involved billions of dollars in multiple countries. This was a case where one part of the government didn't even know what another part of the government was doing. Thousands of people were murdered. Multiple countries in Central America as well as Iran and Israel were involved. And yet it was kept as a total secret from the media, or perhaps by the media, for years. Not only was it possible to hide this from the public, but most of the government was unaware of the activities of a small cabal from within. Covert actions and deception in the press aren't irregular, they're normal. When patriots expose how blatantly obvious it is that there is a cover-up, regardless of how much evidence they have, the criminal's last refuge is to hide behind the stigma of conspiracy. They want you to ignore history in favor of belief based on authority. State deception and conspiracy isn't rare, it's normal. Blindly believing your TV is irresponsible and it's stupid. There is nothing kooky or funny about covert warfare and assassinations. It deserves open scrutiny and sincere investigation. I'm going to show you some live clips about the truck bombings in case you never saw them, forgot about them, or don't believe me. And also pay attention to these live reports about explosions at the base, the lobby, the basement of the building. These are reports from eyewitnesses, survivors, firemen, police, and the FBI.
That is another bomb going off. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place. And then an hour after the first hit here, with the first crash that took place, he said, there was another explosion that took place in one of the towers here. According to his theory, he thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building. The second device, he speculates, was probably planted in the building.
I think it was the third plane, but again,
no, it could have been something that was planted.
Or a bomb planted in the building.
But as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last.
And you were working there? Yes, I was right there. I was down in the basement, came down, all of a sudden the elevator blew up, smoke. I dragged the guy out, his skin was hanging off, and I dragged him out.
They saw an airliner go into one of those towers. Then, an hour later than that, we had that big explosion from much, much lower. I don't know what on earth caused that.
We've heard reports of secondary explosions after the aircraft impacted, whether in fact there wasn't something else at the base of the towers that in fact were the coup de grace to bring them to the ground.
Do we have Jim Smith available on microphone from Chopper 2 as he takes these pictures? Jim?
Yes, I am here, Michael.
Jim, tell us what's happening.
Time two planes hit the building, that the FBI most likely thinks that there was a car or truck packed with explosives underneath the buildings, which also exploded at the same time and brought both of them down.
Now that's the first time we're hearing that. So 2 planes and explosives that were in the building, is that correct?
That is the working theory at this point.
The New York City Police Department has a report that the FBI is responding to New Jersey because a truck reportedly loaded with explosives has been stopped by authorities on the road there, and the men with that truck have been detained.
They stopped the truck, they found an entire truck full of explosives, and they arrested them. Those two men and their explosives are in police custody tonight, and another tragedy has been averted.
Still alive in the rubble in and around the World Trade Center. And word late tonight that 2 suspects are in FBI custody after a truckload of explosives was discovered around the George Washington Bridge. That bridge links New York to New Jersey over the Hudson River. Whether the discovery of those explosives had anything to do with other events of the day is unclear, but the FBI has 2 suspects in hand, said the truck load of explosives, enough explosives were in the truck to do great damage to the George Washington Bridge. But they arrested the 2 suspects and they're questioning them as we speak.
And that it was near the George Washington Bridge. There were 2 or 3 men who were in the van. The van was pulled over. It is not clear why the van was pulled over, but when it was, law enforcers found tons of explosives inside of the van.
George Washington Bridge, Marcia.
Well, you know, Todd, it's really an amazing thing. Most of New York City's rescue operations and their police and fire departments have been concentrating their actions down in lower Manhattan, where the 2 planes hit the 2 towers of the World Trade Center. But some very intelligent and aggressive cops also stopped another terrorist attack from happening on the George Washington Bridge. CBS 2 has learned exclusively that 2 men are in custody tonight after being arrested at the George Washington Bridge with an entire truckload of explosives.
The FBI has now put out a nationwide APB, all points bulletin, for a white Chevy van with New Jersey registration. Written on the back is Urban Moving Systems.
There were at least 2, possibly 3 vans stopped by police on 9/11, and another 4th van spotted by a journalist. One had 5 individuals and traces of explosives. Another had 2 individuals and was packed with explosives. A 3rd van got away, and a 4th was possibly a diversion. The first van had been spotted earlier in Liberty State Park by a witness who saw 3 men celebrating and filming the World Trade Center attack. The timelines given by Sylvan Kirschberg and Paul Kirschberg, Yaron Schmel, Omar Mamari, and Oded Eldner were all over the place, and each had tickets to leave the U.S. with immediate travel dates to destinations all over the world. Oded Eldner, who had $4,700 stuffed in a sock, tried to lie to police about stopping for gas and claimed that he learned of the first explosion by telephone at 8 a.m. Problem being the first explosion wasn't until 8:45 a.m. Must have been a little nervous. Perhaps his greatest slip-up, though, was revealing that you could only see one side of one tower from the roof of Urban Moving Systems. So they moved to another spot with a full view of the length of both towers so that they could document the event. Eyewitnesses had seen them already on top of the roof of their van, posing and taking pictures, only 5 minutes after the first plane crash. Urban Moving Systems is at least 5 minutes away. They were already on the roof of a parking garage in place, looking at the north side of the North Tower, which is exactly where the plane impacted. From the police reports, we gathered a helicopter for the local radio station AM 880 can be seen in the foreground of one of the photographs taken by the dancing Israelis, and the FFA traffic records show it was hovering over the Hudson River between 8:50 and 9:03 a.m. The Israelis took 76 photographs, and eyewitnesses also saw them video recording the event. They can be visibly seen smiling. Sylvan Kirschberg is even shown flicking a green lighter as if he was at a rock concert. Interestingly, Sylvan Kirschberg had been spotted in the Doric Towers the day before on 9/10/2001. He lied to 2 men in an elevator and said that he was a construction worker. He was positively identified in the police lineup. Both Doric Tower and the World Trade Centers were highlighted on maps of the area found in the van at the time of their arrest, and Sylvan admitted to the FBI polygrapher that he had been a map maker in Israel. Why would they have maps of New York with the World Trade Centers highlighted, as well as the place they were going to film and take pictures of the event from? Sylvan was also the driver that babbled on about Palestinians without any provocation to the police at the time of their arrest, and Yaron Schmel also lied to the police about their whereabouts, claiming that they were on the west side in New York on 9A.
The story that the feds build is a very good story. When you hear their story, you start even to believe it inside. Okay, maybe I'm a spy. I'm sure that I'm not, but the story is so good, so maybe I am.
What's funny is Sylvan Kurtzberg was not one of the three later on an Israeli talk show to talk about being busted celebrating the attacks. Yet we know he was there because he's in the photographs. Omer Mamari was not supposed to have been there, yet he switched places with Sylvan on the talk show. Maybe because both the Kurtzberg brothers were flagged as Mossad agents, and they were able to hide which 3 of the 5 had been busted celebrating the attacks, until in August 2011 Freedom of Information Act because of the timestamp of the bolo, as well as reports from the New York Times and Fox, we know these men had been filming the entire event, which shows prior knowledge. Because of the matching license plates, we know that this is the same van later pulled over on Route 3 in East Rutherford by police. It had 5 individuals. Now either the witness from Liberty State Park had not seen 2 of the men, or the 3 she did see had picked up 2 more. They were all Israelis, and had taken pictures of themselves flicking lighters with the burning World Trade Center in the background. The second plane had not even hit, and many assumed the first was a bizarre accident, but not these excited Israelis. They knew. Their van was traced back by its logo, Urban Moving Systems, to a front for the Israeli Mossad, Israel's CIA. 2 of the 5 men arrested's names popped up on the CFI and FBI's database as known Israeli agents. They had over $4,700 stuffed inside a sock and highlighted maps of New York and New Jersey. It gets even more interesting when the live reports report truck bombings as well as arrests, and then this suddenly disappears from the media and the American conscience. Instead, we are fed images of dancing Palestinians. It's funny how Palestinians were featured dancing on every single channel when this was a false prepackaged tape, and yet the Israelis who actually were dancing on 9/11 never see airtime. The dancing Israelis who were working for Mossad front company Urban Moving Systems get caught in a van with traces of explosives. They were filming the 9/11 attacks in New York with the planes crashing into the buildings before it happened. So they just decided to set up a film on that particular day, driving around in a van that had traces of explosives. They just strolling through, you know, put a camera, let's point at the World Trade Center for no particular reason, just in case something happens. And then, of course, 9/11 happens. After the police pulled them over and demanded they get out of the vehicle, this is what happened, and I'll quote from Counterpunch. The driver, 23-year-old Sylvan Kurtzberg, refused and was asked several more times, but appeared to be fumbling with a black leather fanny pouch type of bag. With guns drawn, the police physically removed Kurtzberg, while 4 other men, 2 more men had apparently joined the group since the morning, were also removed from the van, handcuffed, placed on the grass medium, and read their Miranda rights. They had not been told the reasons for their arrest. Yet, according to DeCarlo's report, this officer was told without question by the driver, "We are Israeli. We are not your problem. Your problem are our problems. The Palestinians are the problem." Another of the 5 Israelis, again without prompting, told the officers, falsely, that we were on the West Side Highway in New York City during the incident. Why did they automatically assume they were being pulled over because of something to do with 9/11? Why did Yaron lie to the police without being prompted and say they were on the west side of New York when 9/11 happened, when we know they were not, as they were witnessed filming the first plane hitting and celebrating the attack, taking pictures of themselves and flicking lighters up in the air? What exactly were they hiding? They obviously knew the attack was happening. They were thrown in jail and they failed their polygraph test, but eventually they were deported back to Israel. Other Israeli spies were busted in several other states as well as Mexico, but nothing ever comes of it. Once they get arrested, the higher-ups always swoop in and deport them for visa violations. Some of the lower FBI and police are furious about this, but there's really nothing they can do about it. We've seen airplanes and truck bombs, but what about the other explosions higher up in the towers? If bombs were inside, how could they be set in there with so many employees working in the towers? And who did it? You can forget about security, that's a non-issue. But exactly how and where could one place charges without anyone noticing? A good place to start would be the men arrested for fake IDs that granted them access to the towers to fix sprinkler systems, upgrade internet cables, move out furniture, and work on chronically broken elevators, especially when the Israeli-owned company they claimed to work for had no authenticity. Movers bring the goods, elevator and cable mechanics set them in place, maintenance shuts down the fire prevention system. Quick 3-step plan.
Any sense at all, have you heard anything, even anecdotally, from the cops about how many people managed to get out of the building before they collapsed?
No, absolutely not. But there's also, I don't know if it was the case now, but I do know that one of the towers had a major elevator that went all the way to the top that was malfunctioning and has been malfunctioning for at least a month. They've been having a lot of trouble with that.
Aside from the mysterious elevator workers of the oddly chronically broken elevators and the Israeli movers contracted by Zim Shipping Company, itself partly Israeli state-owned, which broke a $50,000 lease in the World Trade Center to relocate to Virginia a week before 9/11, who else had suspicious access to the towers? In 2002, a simple case of fraud over fake IDs in Tennessee led to the arrest of 6 Middle Eastern men and revealed damning information about 9/11, about men claiming to have done work in the basement of the towers with fake passes. The key witness, herself an accomplice in the ID fraud, was killed a day before her trial date.